Hello everybody, I'm Kate Cass. Welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. This is one you guys have been waiting for since I think before this film even came out. I may not have many videos about Sonic the Hedgehog on this channel, but people still know that I really like Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, a lot. I really like Sonic. But honestly, that's kind of what the celebration for Sonic's 30th anniversary has been all about. I may not talk about Sonic all that often, but you guys really like it when I do. So I wanted to use this occasion to do the kinds of videos on Sonic subjects you've wanted to see me cover here for a while. Like completing my long neglected Shadow the Hedgehog character study, or reviewing all of Sonic's animated history, all leading up to the hottest topic around the Blue Blur over the last year or two, this feature film. A movie that was a long time coming. This story didn't begin with Gangsta's Paradise, kids. The news of this movie's development had been circulating since all the way back in 2014. Remember the first half of the 2010s? We were so young. From that moment on, it felt like every announcement and bit of information about this movie was either a good sign or a bad one. The news began when Sony Pictures acquired the film rights and began production on a live-action CGI hybrid movie starring Sonic.
That's bad.
Then it was revealed that Marza Animation, who had produced some of the best animation Sonic had ever ran through, would be involved with the CG.
That's good.
However, the project laid in limbo for a few years with nothing to show for it until Sony lost the rights, possibly due to the studio hack a few years back.
That's bad.
Luckily, Paramount picked the project up and we were suddenly getting information on creative signed onto the project, including the directorial debut of Jeff Fowler, who had worked in the Sonic franchise before on the video game end of things, and Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool, as one of the producers.
That's good.
Slowly, there were confirmed casting announcements trickling down the grapevine until the realization that this movie was really happening was solidified in May of 2019 by that now infamous first trailer.
Meow?
Can I go now?
It was a bit of a roller coaster, to say the least. I kid you not, that first trailer dropped while I was out seeing Avengers Endgame. So I'm processing all the grand emotions of that experience, came home, logged online, and then had to process a whole different set of emotions, let's say. It was a long day. What I'm getting at with this intro, instead of just jumping into the synopsis, is the build-up to this movie was an experience in and of itself. Expectations range from those who already accepted it would be a train wreck in line with the many other failures and shortcomings of the Sonic franchise, people who were enthusiastic to see it as their new guilty pleasure, or just for something new to riff on, or those who were secretly hoping it wasn't as bad as it was looking, but weren't getting their hopes up. That was me, by the way. I think a lot of Sonic fans can understand that sometimes it's exhausting to be a fan of this franchise, and this movie only seemed to be adding fuel to the fire of public perception, not helped by the general attitude towards video game movies after decades of disappointment. But then, after some delays to give the movie a bit of a facelift, we'll get to that, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie was finally released, and it was received moderately well. I'll take it. Critics were fairly kind to it, it was a box office hit, it reignited some people's love for Sonic, and for many, it would go down in history as the last movie they saw in theaters for 18 months. But you're not here for the stats. You're here to finally hear, properly, and in excruciating detail, what I think of this movie. Well, without any further ado, let's dive right into the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Many years ago, Sonic, voiced by Ben Schwartz, was sent to our world to protect him from evil forces that wanted to harness his powers of super speed. After spending most of his life in isolation, he's discovered and hunted down by the mad and ambitious scientist, Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. While running for his life yet again, he seeks the help of a local cop, Tom Wachowski, played by James Marsden, to help him get away to protect this planet he's grown to love, only to see more of it than he ever has before and discover what it truly means to protect what you care about. So there's a lot to unpack there. Even if it is a fairly simple story, it represents a lot. So rather than go through the story and present analysis as we go, I'm gonna break it down into a few major talking points. Let's just get this conversation out of the way right now. The design choices. Yes, the old Sonic design is awful, atrocious, fascinatingly so. I hate to say things like this, but I sincerely do not understand how so many artists and production members looked at this design for months, if not years on end and went, yeah, that looks pretty good. Once the public got the slightest glance at it though, it was clear a mistake had been made. And director Jeff Fowler quickly took to social media to do damage control and say the film would be delayed so they could fix it. There was a lot of talk when this was announced, some being relieved that this could be salvaged, but others, rightfully so, were concerned for the visual effects team and animators, who were basically going to have to redo all the work they had done by the time the trailer came out to sway the court of public opinion. Now, this is an important conversation to have, as there have been many incidents of, let's call it fan entitlement, that have deeply hurt the people who create the very movies, shows, and so on that these people claim to love because it's not exactly the way they wanted it to be. But on the other hand, sometimes the average consumer can notice something that somehow went over the heads of everyone involved with a certain project, and it's better to know that while it can still be fixed rather than after it's too late. This is why we have focus groups, except now we have social media. Sometimes a necessary evil. Yes, it is a deep and tragic shame that the studio behind the redone effects and animation was shut down not long after the movie came out. However, I can't find out one way or the other if that had anything to do with this specific incident. That probably had more to do with how poorly compensated the people who help bring fantastical elements on screen through visual effects are compensated for their work. A discussion that's a bit beyond the scope of this video. But it's at least worth mentioning that, as far as I can find, no one on the animation team was overworked because of the redesign. That's why the movie was delayed, to give the team the time they needed to fix things.
Usually when the first trailer for a movie drops, all the effects you see are literally pretty much the only effects that have been completed up until that point. So it's about the same amount of time that they had that was added on top of it. So as far as an overall production schedule, things got shifted rather well.
The VFX studios and animators worked their magic, they brought in Sonic's golden boy, Tyson Hess, to consult on the redesign, and together they did a stellar job reworking Sonic for this movie. If anything, this whole incident shows how important good character design is, because I truly believe the movie is objectively better with the new design. Yeah, everything was filmed already, so nothing really changed about it story-wise, but just the way Sonic interacts with the world and how expressive he is could not have been pulled off with the more quote-unquote realistic design they were going to use. Look at this moment where he's timing himself on a radar gun. That scene would not look as good and feel as much like Sonic as it does without those large fists, side mount smirk, and giant expressive eyes. It's been said that Sonic the Hedgehog's biggest selling point is his design. Every part of it is recognizable, eye-catching, and appealing. So to see this mistake corrected kept the best thing about Sonic intact and therefore can feel more true to the franchise's roots of Sonic looking cool and having fun. We also have a new voice for Sonic. When it was announced that Sonic will be played by comedian Ben Schwartz, reception was mixed. Some were into the idea, even animating Sonic to archive audio by Schwartz.
I don't need weapons to beat you. I got my rare skills.
But some were disappointed. Yes, it's annoying that the perfectly capable voice actors for Sonic have been replaced by celebrity casting again, but at the very least, Schwartz is a good choice and is a well-recognized voice actor in his own right. So it didn't feel as much like stunt casting as this usually does. Isn't that right, Mario movie? So, we have a main character that looks and sounds like a good take on Sonic, but how about the story? Well, the whole thing feels sort of like a prequel to the Sonic the Hedgehog we've known for so long, presented as an origin story of an inexperienced Sonic with a tragic backstory, which is new, but not unwelcome. I remember when this movie came out, some people were saying that this new backstory contradicts the games, and if you mean this isn't from the games, you're right. But if you mean this contradicts an already established story, that is incorrect. The thing is, in terms of the games, Sonic doesn't have a backstory. As far as Sega's concerned, Sonic just appeared on that green hill one day and started running. But as we saw in the last video, expanded materials like the TV shows did experiment with giving Sonic an origin story a bit. However, that's been much more difficult to do these days due to certain legal issues. Thanks, Penders. So it's kind of a miracle a story as elaborate for Sonic as this was even approved. We don't know Sonic's whole story yet because he doesn't really know it, but what we got was pretty engaging. Yes, Longclaw is a movie exclusive character, and it took me a bit to warm up to her, honestly. Mostly because her design doesn't quite fit this universe to me. I think it's that her features are small and sharp, I don't know. But I'd be open to learning more about her in the future. Plus, getting to see an echidna tribe vibe was incredibly exciting. It was a great hook to open this movie with. On the whole, it's probably the best reasoning behind the main character from another world winds up in the human world story ever. But we'll go more into that later. Because of this backstory, Sonic's personality is also a bit different than what we're used to. He's still a wisecracking, fun-loving speedster who loves adventure, but now there's an air of caution and hesitation to his actions, forced to stay in hiding out of fear of being discovered and hunted down because of his powers. Typically, Sonic for the most part is able to make friends with almost anyone and has friends and allies around all the time, so it's weird to see him so alone. It's a new obstacle for the character for sure, and it affects every aspect of his character, especially with the changes to his personality. For the last couple of decades, Sonic's been a pretty cool and collective character, one that certainly wasn't afraid to speak his mind, especially if it would annoy his enemies, but one that had an active off switch. This Sonic, on the other hand, well, won't shut up, which could definitely push the buttons of certain viewers, and I will admit it felt a bit off from the Sonic that I grew up with, but watching the movie again, a couple things lined up for me that made me much more accepting of this version of the Blue Blur. For one, revisiting the Deke shows added some perspective, particularly Set AM and Underground, where Sonic's personality was very similar to this portrayal, for better or for worse. But I also realized that this constant talking and commenting is because of the situation Sonic is in here. He's been hiding all by himself for over 10 years by this point, only watching conversations and relationships from afar, never engaging with someone who could communicate with him. Heck, one of the most energetic yet depressing sequences in the entire movie is when Sonic plays a baseball game by himself. So Sonic talks all the time because for so many years, the only person he's had to talk to is himself. And once he does get to hang out with other beings, he's so excited about it that he just can't contain it. In that context, it's a character trait that can go from mildly annoying to pretty amusing to kind of tragic. It might be weird and kind of mean to say this, but seeing Sonic have to deal with isolation like this is actually kind of compelling. At least for a series where typically Sonic is barely allowed to cry. It's easy to go to that headspace when something takes a different direction from what we're familiar with in a franchise, that it's automatically bad. But looking at it with a deeper lens, it's a pretty interesting take on the character. Perfect? No. But definitely interesting. Wanting to dive into Sonic's past before he became the hero we all know and love is something creatives have wanted to do for a very long time. It was originally going to be the premise of Sonic Boom, for crying out loud, but that is a road that has been very off limits for a while now. To Sonic fans, it's mind-blowing that this movie was even able to go there and take this approach to Sonic's story, with Sega being so against the idea for so long. As the movie goes on, we get to see Sonic's transformation. He develops more confidence, finds something to stand up for, and embraces his strength rather than trying to run and hide from it. In a way, it kind of explains Sonic's attitude of running around all the time exploring, wanting to make the most of every day. As someone who's been a fan of this character for a long time, it's pretty cool to see that metamorphosis. But Sonic's not the only one to get the backstory treatment. This movie is also sort of an origin story of Dr. Robotnik. In this story, Robotnik is an eccentric mad scientist recruited by the US military to track Sonic down after he exposed himself. That actually makes a lot of sense. Real quick before we dive into the character, let me just say what we're all thinking. Jim Carrey is the highlight of this film. No contest. I understand why Carrey has been out of the game for so long, but to see him back on the big screen just doing his thing with that exuberant energy that hasn't dulled in the slightest after all these years felt so damn good to watch. Channeling that into a villain like Robotnik only makes it better too. It works so well. Only with Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik could this mad scientist dance sequence become one of the most glorious things ever brought to cinema. Helped by the fact that a lot of Robotnik's best moments are punctuated by his right-hand man, Agent Stone, played by Lee Majub, who I don't think we give enough credit for his contributions to some of the film's best parts.
In a sequentially ranked hierarchy based on level of critical importance, the disparity between us is too vast to quantify. Agent Stone?
The doctor thinks you're basic.
Please bring him back for the sequel. Again, it's a different interpretation from what we're used to. Most obviously in the design department, though I think Robotnik can get away with that better than Sonic could have. But that's because he's not that guy yet. It's a version that still has recognizable elements, where you can see the hint of this person slowly becoming the mad scientist we love to hate. For me, all this shows how essential it is to respect the material that came before you in a franchise like this before attempting to reimagine it or put your own spin on it. Because even when this movie did things I didn't particularly care for, I never felt like the people behind it didn't care about Sonic the Hedgehog. They were either fans already or really did their homework. With how many people it takes to make a movie like this, it might have been a little bit of both. There are so many little touches and references throughout the film that will make any longtime fan of this franchise grin a bit when you spot them. And not just the obvious stuff like bringing back Green Hill Zone for the bajillionth time, or dropping in iconic catchphrases that have been associated with Sonic for a long time that he's never actually uttered himself. Until now.
Gotta go fast!
Like I tend to when I talk about things with tons of references in them, I'm not going to go over all of them. There are plenty of other videos dedicated to cataloging every single reference and callback in these 95 minutes. But as usual, I will point out some of my favorites. First off, incorporating the iconic golden rings into the Paramount logo boosted my confidence in this movie from the get-go by at least 20%. Like I said before, I love seeing the Echidna tribe have a small role, but play a major part in the story. I hope they expand on what they wanted from Sonic later down the line. I also love that warp rings are a major part of this movie. They're used in such an essential way that you don't really see that often, especially in more narrative-driven media like this. It leads to some really fun and creative sequences. Speaking of the warp rings, one of Sonic's potential hiding places is a world that is filled with nothing but mushrooms, and Sonic hates it. I saw a lot of people assume that this was a dig at Mario, but more likely it's a callback to a well-known zone in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That said, I do find it very funny that people immediately drew that conclusion. Another note I liked was that a good portion of this movie is dedicated to getting to San Francisco. For those who don't know, Sonic has a pretty long history with the Golden City. Sega used to have a subsidiary office there, and it led to the team behind Sonic Adventure 2, aka the best Sonic game, creating locations and levels inspired by San Francisco. While there are quite a few differences between this movie's Sonic and Robotnik and their game counterparts, the reasoning behind giving Robotnik the nickname Eggman is somewhat similar to how that happened in Sonic Adventure.
Look, it's a giant talking egg.
Silence! I am Dr. Robotnik.
Whatever you say, Eggman.
Your flying eggs are pretty impressive, Mr. Eggman.
Though I think the movie did a better job at setting it up, and the logic makes a bit more sense. Also, Robotnik has a section on the fuse box in his lab labeled Badniks. That one made me smile. And last but not least, Sonic got to try what is in this universe his very first chili dog. Such a milestone. Unfortunately, because of the kind of movie this is, it comes with a fart joke. Did not love that. Though come to think of it, when chili dogs are apparently the only thing this little speedster eats, I'm surprised this doesn't happen way more often. But that's a pretty good way to segue into our next point of conversation. The type of movie they chose to tell a Sonic the Hedgehog story in. A live-action, CGI hybrid family film. A subgenre that has some distaste behind it, to say the least. Not unearned for sure, and I wasn't completely pleased when I learned this was the approach they were taking with a Sonic movie, but I tend to be easier on these types of movies than most. Not all the time, but at the very least, they land into the guilty pleasure category for me. So this does have a lot of, let's call them tropes, that come with movies like these, especially movies like this centered around licensed characters. Stumbling across a portal and winding up in our world through some mysterious circumstances, forced inhuman characters. Every other line is a gag of varying levels of amusement, including trendy references for the kids. Look, Sonic's flossing! How charming! At least he didn't dab. And bizarre product placement. Seriously, what's with this movie's fixation on Olive Garden? Because of this, the movie definitely falls into certain traps that can make an older audience groan, and if there was any major thing I had against the movie, it would be related to its handicaps of having to take place in this genre. That said, I do think the Sonic movie takes better advantage of the tools in its kit than most. Typically, these beloved characters find a portal to the human world stories are annoying because because they move away from the fantastical world into something mundane. However, I'd argue it works pretty well in Sonic's case because things like humans and traveling between worlds are common occurrences in the franchise already. It's literally the premise to one of the most popular pieces of Sonic media of all time, Sonic X. Sonic interacting with humans in a realistic setting feels more fitting than it does for some of these other properties, especially if you started with the adventure era like I did. Now yes, some people have never been fond of human characters as a part of Sonic's world, even when it was the norm, and if that's the case for you, this movie is not going to change your mind. But because it's been done before, changing the setting and including humans doesn't feel as unnatural or forced as this plot usually does. This might be a divisive stance, but I don't think the human characters are forced either. Of course, it helps that our main villain could conceivably be from the human world and not coincidentally whisked away into the world with our hero, but this is more about the movie exclusive characters. First off, let's discuss Tom Wachowski, played by James Marsden, an actor who is way too talented for these kind of movies, and yet he seems to be in a lot of them. Anyway, Tom is a small town cop hoping to move up the ranks and serve in the big city. This is a good call in two respects. One, his job has nothing to do with advertising, like so many characters like this tend to be for some freaking reason, and two, it's beneficial to the circumstances he winds up in with Sonic. He can handle himself really well in dangerous situations, he's not easily deceived and can think on his feet, and most relevant of all, he wants to defend the defenseless, which is what Sonic is by the time they properly run into each other. Tom says early on that he wants to work in a big city like San Francisco because he wants to protect people in real trouble. So while he has the typical amount of disbelief and dismissiveness that you might expect when running into a creature like Sonic, his protective nature kicks in and he becomes something of a paternal figure to the Blue Blur. He wanted to help someone in their greatest hour of need, and that is exactly what Sonic gives him. It's a good way to enhance both of their character arcs in a way that feels mutually beneficial. I mean, yeah, it's kinda dumb that the movie with the fastest thing alive in it turns into a road trip film for the second act to warrant Tom's further involvement, but I will say that I appreciate that they gave a half-decent explanation, that Sonic just doesn't know where San Francisco is. Is it lame? Kind of, but it sort of makes sense, and with a movie like this, that's more than most give.
Why don't we take an airplane?
Because then it wouldn't be a road movie. Whee!
We also have Tom's wife Maddie, played by Tika Sumpter, who I also really like. On the one hand, she's a veterinarian, so once again it's nice that she has skills that can be helpful for the situation without feeling like dead weight. And on the other, she has a sweet relationship with Tom. We only get pieces of it since they spend a good amount of the movie apart, but when they are together, they really feel like a supportive team. They don't have petty arguments or shallow ultimatums once challenges come along, and work really well together once she's caught up on everything. Could she have done more? Sure. But for what we got, it was a deeply refreshing couple for a movie like this. Also, shout out to Maddie's niece who gives Sonic his signature sneakers. There's something about a little kid giving Sonic his iconic shoes so his feet won't hurt anymore that is just so precious. If there was one problem I had with the involvement of the human characters, it's the conflict that comes with Tom's desire to leave his hometown to pursue something better. A pursuit that Sonic is furious about. And I do not think this is a decision that deserves so much pushback from Sonic. Yeah, it makes sense that Sonic would react this way, since he feels like Tom is just abandoning something Sonic has wanted all his life. Friends and a sense of community that he only gets to observe from a distance. But it felt more like a petty excuse to add conflict to the second act, creating tension that really doesn't make any meaningful impact for the rest of the movie. And this might just be me, but I think the mad scientist chasing them down a highway to try and capture and dissect our heroes is conflict enough. Maybe that's just my own biases though. I'm not really a big fan of these your hometown is the best home kind of stories in general. As someone who is also from a small town and lost the enchantment for it a long time ago, I will say there were remarks about this small town life that really resonated with me.
And maybe someday you'll achieve your goal of getting a Costco car.
Oof, I felt that. One day that will be me. Talking about comedy though is where things get a bit more difficult. Not only is humor insanely subjective, but this movie is all over the place in terms of humor. It felt like for every fun, even laugh out loud moment, there was another gag that would make me roll my eyes, straight up groan, or just not feel anything. In a 95-minute movie, I don't expect every joke to land, but the consistency of what lands and what doesn't, for me at least, was a really mixed bag. Sometimes there would be unexpected surprises. performances, like how James Marsden and Jim Carrey work surprisingly well together. Their standoffs more often than not include some pretty charming banter. It makes it feel like Robotnik is just as much Tom's rival as he is Sonic's, and that's kind of amazing to me. Not to mention that any interaction with Robotnik is seasoned with Carrey's improv and finely tuned delivery, which is yes, just yes, all the yes. The rest of this video could just be me playing his best one-liners.
Ever wonder where your tax dollars are going?
That was an illegal left, by the way.
Pin yourself to the wall.
Sonic has a similar style to him where it feels like a lot of his stuff was improvised, but that angle doesn't work quite as well for me in this case, because almost every line that's not in a heart-to-heart scene includes a joke, and it never stops. It feels like the Mel Brooks mentality to keep throwing jokes at the audience non-stop, but not as fine-tuned. Don't get me wrong, Sonic does have some pretty funny lines, but I could easily see some people finding this obnoxious, and there are times where it really tests my patience. Like how it seemed that Detective Pikachu's personality and dialogue was morphed around Ryan Reynolds' casting, I feel like the same is true for Ben Schwartz as Sonic. And Ben Schwartz's style of comedy is something that has to be used in just the right way, as I found it's a fine line between amusing and obnoxious when it comes to his characters. I think enough of the sincerity he can convey shines through into Sonic that it doesn't hurt the character in the long run, but maybe tone it back slightly as his character grows and matures in future films, okay? Then there were jokes which range from awkward to straight up bad. The worst part is that these are the jokes that drag on forever. I can't think of a better example than when Tom tries to sneak Sonic into a building hiding in his bag.
Do you have your child in that bag?
No. I mean, yes, it's a child, but it's not mine.
Wow, this is the worst. But the powers that be thought it was a great joke. So great that they put it in the first trailer.
Stay in there and be quiet. How much longer? I can't breathe in here.
Really? This is the first impression you want to give for what people can expect from this movie? This is your best pitch? I know the big talking point with the first trailer was that old design, and I totally get that, but honestly, I was more fixated on this joke and how perplexingly bad it was. And almost every movie in this genre has a moment like this. Why? To put an edgy joke for the parents dragged along to see this? So yeah, this movie does fall into quite a few of the traps that can come with this type of film. Heck, it even opens with a preview where the main character narrates over it going, "Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I wound up here." Anyone else sick of that one yet? Though in fairness, they do have a pretty fun way of calling back to it once the story catches up to that point.
Now you understand why there's a psychotic robot doctor chasing a supersonic blue hedgehog.
Sonic, I've been with this franchise for over 15 years now. You didn't have to explain, I know the drill, this makes perfect sense to me. All that said, while how well these elements work for this movie will vary greatly depending on the viewer and your tolerance for this subgenre, the most important thing about everything that happens is that the main focus is still Sonic and his journey. What comes after that awful Sonic in the bag scene kinda kicks ass. Sonic starts acting like a hero and his rivalry with Robotnik is officially christened. The third act gives us the high-speed chase scenes with dizzying speeds and messing with swarms of robots that are more in tune with the Sonic we know and love. The movie was fine up to this point, but it felt so good to finally get here. This is what I've been waiting for. This is Sonic. With Robotnik utilizing Sonic's harness power to upgrade his own tech and chase him down, something that I can't believe took him 29 years to think of, and utilizing the warp rings where this chase becomes a globe-trotting race. Seeing Sonic race down the Great Wall of China and run up the pyramids is a really cool sight. That alone is a nice compromise for the story to take place in the human world. Do I wish this was a full CGI animated film in Sonic's universe taking on a massive threat like something straight out of the opening of Sonic Unleashed? Absolutely, I would have killed to see that. But if this is what we are confined to, I think enough of Sonic's strains pull through to make the most of the genre they chose to go with. And the really important new inclusions, like the movie exclusive characters, endear themselves to me by the end. Which leads us to the most important part. When the traditional Sonic the Hedgehog angle and how it's been retooled as a live-action family film come together in the big finale. A confrontation that might be my favorite part of the movie. This final standoff is so Cool. I'm sorry. I'm sure to some of you that sounds lame, but it just works so well for me. And here's why. For starters, this is where Robotnik officially makes the switch from eccentric freelance scientist for the government with some weird ideas to the mad genius with delusions of grandeur, obsessed with a talking blue hedgehog. In the movie, that obsession takes on a more defined form than Robotnik just being frustrated by the meddlesome rodent. He not only wants to take Sonic down, he wants to study him, dissect him, harness his power for his own purposes, or even just for his sick curiosity. If you want a more in-depth look at how excellently they portray Robotnik's insanity here, I highly recommend checking out this one villainous scene dedicated to him by Calamity Hatcher. On the other side, we have Sonic becoming the hero he was always meant to be, by realizing that protecting what you care about doesn't come from shutting yourself away out of fear of hurting them, but by reaching out, making your feelings known, and standing up for what you believe in when it's in jeopardy. Again, making things like the movie exclusive characters feel much more essential to Sonic's journey than you might think. Sonic is typically a strong, independent character, but his true strength and courage comes from having friends around him who believe in him and rely on him. The times in Sonic's history where he's been at his most powerful has come from his friends and admirers lending him their strength through their faith and friendship with him.
When everybody gave their Chaos Emeralds to Sonic, it was because of our friendship. And that's how Sonic is gonna be Chaos!
I'm not using it to run away anymore. I'm using it to protect my friends.
It's corny and cheesy and all the other food metaphors, but it's keeping within the spirit of the Sonic franchise, so it worked for me. That support is what he finally gains in this movie with the people of Green Hills, and that's what makes Sonic embrace his full potential for the first time. Which apparently translates to Sonic gaining lightning powers now? Okay, that's new. The comparisons to the Flash are going to be even more unbearable now. I have seen some fans point out this could be a reinvention of the modern boost mechanic from the games, which is a solid assumption that does make the idea easier to swallow for me. Besides, what really saves the day here isn't the blue streaks of lightning, but Sonic bopping Robotnik's machine on the head until it shatters. The quintessential Sonic strategy. It's an awesome climax. Only complaints I have is that it was too short and has a severe lack of Crush 40. Well, at least the epilogue includes a lovely piano rendition of the Green Hill Zone music. That was pretty cute. The movie properly closes out with Tom and Maddie offering Sonic the home and family he's always wanted. It's cliche and schmaltzy, and it totally won me over. Again, I'm sorry. What do you want from me? It's sweet. And they gave Sonic a race car bed. You know, like in the Archie comics, these people really knew what they were doing. As evident by the moment where we finally see Robotnik embrace his crazed, mad scientist side in the very last seconds of the movie. Boo! Well, on the bright side, Carrie is absolutely rocking the look. It's perfect. I only wish it could have been more of a big reveal and not put into the updated trailers to ease the concerns of fans over the main movie look. For me, the movie went out on an amazing note, and bizarrely enough, made me wish there would be more installments in the Sonic the Hedgehog film franchise. I would not have guessed that. So, after all that, overall, despite how different it can be at times from everything we've known Sonic to be up to this point, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is without a doubt a Sonic the Hedgehog story. It's wacky, kinda cringy at points, a hotbed for memes, and how seriously this movie tries to take itself at points could be surprising to the casual viewer. But what saves it, and what I think ultimately makes it work, is what makes most Sonic the Hedgehog stories work so well. How sincere it all is. Embracing the idea of just wanting to help and do good against all odds, whether internal or external, and the strength that can be unlocked by a supportive community and a healthy dose of self-worth. Do I love everything it did? Heck no. Can I see why some people absolutely couldn't stand it? Most certainly. But there was something really assuring about watching the reception for this movie pour in and seeing people having fun watching a Sonic the Hedgehog adventure. Do you know how rare that is these days? It felt like such a relief after all the concerns leading up to this movie's release. It could have been a lot worse. Give Pat Mac's video on the other pitches for Sonic the Hedgehog movies there have been over the years a watch, and you'll understand how lucky we got here. Now, all that said, it's definitely a movie I liked more when I went in with the intention of reviewing it. When I saw it in theaters, I thought it was fine. It's a fine, fun movie as it is, and a totally valid take on the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. But even now, it's not my favorite interpretation of Sonic or his world, and where video game movies are concerned, I still think Detective Pikachu was better. Leagues better. What ultimately got me excited about it was the potential going forward. I get that this is an origin story, and it's a pretty good one, but frustratingly, the movie got the most exciting for me as it was ending. One of the reasons I was hoping we get a sequel confirmed in the months after the movie released was because the stuff they were teasing was what I really wanted to see. Sonic becoming a full-fledged and confident hero, Robotnik / Eggman in all of his mad maniacal glory with his ridiculous mustache. Heck, the mid-credit scene is where Tails makes his entrance, and that was so damn exciting. I want to see more of that. The Sonic the Hedgehog movie is a perfectly fine interpretation of the Sonic universe, and I am so glad to see some people getting into the franchise again, or for the first time, because of how accessible this movie was. The people behind this film didn't look down on the franchise and listened to concerns that ultimately, in this case, made the movie better, which as a longtime fan, I greatly appreciate. But right now, it's a movie that I weirdly like more for what it could potentially become as a franchise than what it currently is. So, before I close this out, and since we got the long-awaited trailer for the sequel as I was editing this video, let me indulge a bit in the possibilities for the future. Top 5 things I would like to see in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Number 5, seeing Sonic and Tails become best friends. How they meet is definitely going to be different from the games, and I'm really curious to see how the different circumstances affect this iconic friendship. Also, I still want to know why Tails was looking for Sonic in the first place. Number 4, Knuckles. After a lot of speculation, everyone's favorite echidna has been confirmed to be in the sequel. Given how early in the timeline this could be the return of rival Knuckles. After seeing Knuckles get the short end of the stick for so long and be so terribly misrepresented, all I want is for him to be a good, well-rounded character who does dumb things, but means well. How they handle Knuckles could make or break this sequel for me, so don't let me down. Number 3, Metal Sonic. This is one I haven't seen many people bring up, but feels like the next logical step. Eggman's still got Sonic's little quill with some of his power contained in it, so with how much he values machines over people and suddenly having a lot of free time on his hands, we could be foreshadowing the big screen debut of Sonic's robotic doppelganger. Number 2, the Chaos Emeralds. Including the infamous MacGuffins of this franchise seems like a given at this point, especially with Knuckles, the guardian of the Master Emerald, involved with the story. Also, Chaos Emeralds means that Super Sonic would be on the table, and Super Sonic with movie Sonic Force Lightning needs to happen right now. Just make sure he doesn't go all Fleetway Supersonic and we should be okay. And my admittedly very self-indulgent number 1, Shadow teased in the mid-credits scene. Look, I'm not saying he should be in this sequel, this one already seems pretty packed, but you're not gonna sit there and tell me that SA2 wouldn't make an awesome third movie, are you? Personally, I'd love to see how they'd handle a story like that in this universe. Plus, GUN mechs have been spotted in behind the scenes photos for the sequel, so this could be the natural conclusion to draw from that, right? Right? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. If this movie and all these topics we've covered over the 30th anniversary have taught us anything, is that the Sonic franchise is large, expansive, and persistent. Say what you want about it, but it's here to stay. And I am on board with wherever the fastest thing alive heads in the next 30 years. Thanks for watching, everyone. Definitely let me know what you thought of this movie in the comments below. That's why this series is called Let's Talk About. I want to give a very special thanks to my patrons who help support my content, including David L. Sproul, Sebastian Canino of Cinemageddon Reviews, Chelsea A. Crandall, Hawk Hero, Crowless, Jinx Productions, and Wait in the Wings. If you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to follow any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.